well, pretty close to 6 o'clock, we probably get going here. Just so you know, I'm Casey Ingram with Burleigh County Highway Department. This is on the 66th Street project from Northgate Drive to Apple Creek Road. If you're here for the 66th Street and 71st project, City Commission's going over that one tonight too. For some reason, we'd like to all do the government all the same thing at once, make it super confusing for everybody. But we'll have another public input meeting presentation, a short presentation on this on Thursday. So we kind of dive right into this. What we looked at was 3 main alternatives or build options on 66th Street for railroad overpass and new Apple Creek crossing and intersection improvement on Apple Creek Road in 66. So the first alternative that we always look at, that they always want us, is what happens if we do nothing on this job? Well, the problems still exist. We still have traffic issues, still have intersection problems. So doing nothing is not really an option. So the first build option we actually looked at was, what if we keep 66th Street on existing alignment and we build it on that alignment? What are the pros and cons of that? Well, the pros are you can build through probably faster because you'd have a detour. You'd shut it down and there would be no traffic there. Well, at the same time, that's a big con because the detour route to be able to go around this is you're going to 106th Street or you're going to Yagan Road. So emergency services, that adds about 20 minutes of delay time for ambulance, fire, to be able to get to the city of Lincoln. That's a big problem on there. Also, another issue that we ran into pretty fast was when you go over BNSF or the railroad from the top of their tracks to the bottom of the beams on the bridge, you need 26 feet of clearance. Then from there, you go up to where the roadway's at. So generally, you're looking at 30 feet of fill in this area. Well, you take 30 feet up, you go 4-to-1 slopes, which is 4 feet out for every foot you go vertical. So you're talking 120 feet this side, 120 feet this side. You're going up. By the time we do that, I don't quite fill in Apple Creek here, but I completely fill in Apple Creek here. Well, that's a big problem. I can't just fill in Apple Creek and say, have a good day, and be able to get through all that. So that when that occurred environmentally, that kind of just stopped that build out alternate completely at that point, because we can't just fill in Apple Creek and call it good. So we started looking at, okay, what if we go to the west? What happens there? Well, if I go to the west, I'm taking out one house. I have a lot of crossings on Apple Creek going all the way to the bridge, and I'm pretty much taking out a second house going through there. That's not a real feasible build option either. So it's okay, let's look at going to the east. And there was 2 alternates for alignments that we're looking at. So you had alignment 2, which is the white, then you also had alignment 3, which is the yellow, going through there. So when we looked at alignment 2, we go through a wetland on that southeast corner, and we're going through that no matter what the alignment is. So I would need to look at possibly expanding that wetland, because I'd have wetland impacts. There's an oxbow that goes through here, fill impacts that. I'm crossing BNSF at the same point. So really, there's not a whole lot of change from BNSF to Northgate Drive. Once you get north of that, that's where the real challenges start coming in. And we're looking at how do we minimize right-of-way impacts? How do we minimize wetland and environmental impacts? When we looked at alternate 3 going through there, you're shifting the intersection to the east, which creates problems because you're going through the floodway in a much larger area, and you're filling in the floodway going through there. You also have problems going through the floodplain. Now, the floodway is far more challenging than what the floodplain is, and that's a bunch of terms that engineers use to try and describe how a big flood works. And basically, floodway, really bad, you'll get your hand slapped pretty hard. Floodplain, there's things we can do to deal with it. Now, 30 feet of fill going in there, I'm gonna affect it. Water's gonna raise going through there. So we have to look at how do we get what's called a zero rise solution. So in a 100-year flood, the level's no different than what it is today, even though I put in this 30 feet of fill and have this very large footprint going in there. So that essentially what that does is it takes Apple Creek Bridge, which is a smaller bridge to this today, and around 70, 80 feet, and it translates it into a 425-foot bridge. Because at that point, I can get it to a zero rise solution, but I'm allowing a whole lot of water to be able to pass. And a lot of people ask, well, there's no way in a 100-year flood that all goes. Well, back when this was originally constructed, you could let 100-year floods go up and over roadways, and especially at bridges. Well, we can't do that anymore. That's against the law. So we have to be able to get everything to pass through that floodway in that floodplain, and that's a big reason why that bridge got so large. BNSF, with their area, now they have 400 feet of right-of-way on the east side, and they have 200 feet on the west side of 66. Well, BNSF always starts off with, I don't want you to build anything within my right-of-way. Stay out of it. Well, that means I'm automatically at a 400-foot bridge there. Well, I don't want to do that. So we worked with BNSF, and we were able to work through, and it's okay, we'll allow you to build in there within our right-of-way, but you have to consider we might need a second track, and I still need an access road. And we're okay, pretty reasonable for future expandability going through there. Well, that gets the BNSF railroad bridge about 285 feet in length, looking at it at that point. So then you have two large bridges going through on this project. Doesn't happen on a whole lot of projects where you have two large bridges such as that. And each of those bridges then creates their own unique impacts going through on each alignment. So alignment 3, by the time you get all of the fill and everything going in, you're affecting this oxbow over here, so you're gonna have to mitigate that. You're crossing Apple Creek here. This here, by the time you do an intersection improvement, you're affecting floodplain and floodway, and you're having to mitigate. You're also looking at a whole lot of right-of-way that you're having to acquire to be able to do such a thing. So it's okay, let's try and find another way where we can possibly minimize that. Let's try and split the middle and find a little bit better route going through here. Well, when we're doing that, we're still affecting some oxbows, and when we look at the intersection, if we look at a roundabout, there's oxbows all around that intersection. Well, we affect those, okay, I'm gonna have to mitigate those oxbows. But by having it here and leaving these open, I have places where I can mitigate the oxbows and be able to put them in. When it's here, I'm having far more issues, and I'm having to go to different areas that are further out, which means I have to buy even more land to be able to deal with those. Then the wetlands that run through in some of these areas, we're looking at, okay, we can still mitigate the wetlands down in this area, which means we're having to buy that land to be able to expand that. But to be able to do the wetlands in those areas, instead of having to dig out tens of feet and everything, I can actually dig out about 12 inches of material, be able to expand that wetland, and I can mitigate it because I'm right next to the project. I can do it at a 1-to-1 ratio of impact. If I have to mitigate wetlands more than a half a mile from this project, I'm automatically in 2-to-1. And sometimes the Corps goes, actually, you're not 2-to-1, you're gonna have to do 4 acres for every 1 acre you've impacted. And to mitigate an acre of wetland outside of your project is about $80,000 an acre. Well, in a project this big where you're impacting a lot of acres, that price can get really high really fast. So you wanna be able to mitigate as close as you can on there. You need a good renewable area because wetlands aren't just water. There are actually 3 things. You have to have the right soils, you have to have the right grasses, wetland material, and a renewable water source. Well, here you have 640 acres that drains to this, and also you have the entirety of Apple Creek. So you have a good renewable source going through there. So when we've talked with the Corps, they didn't really see too much of an issue with the wetlands. The big question we're working through is the oxbows, and it's finding a good spot where oxbows can be placed to be able to go through there. Well, that alternate 2 makes that far easier than alternate 3. So when we looked at all this, alternate 2 cut down on our right-of-way needs. It also cut down on the wetland and environmental impacts. So that there on design was, okay, that's kind of the lead alignment, being able to go through. But we still need to go through public input, be able to find what people's opinions are of that. And that does weigh into it, and that is considered being able to look through there. So one other thing that we looked at going through here, when we did all the traffic operations reports and all these studies, is you take your best projection that you have of what the current growth trend of Lincoln is today. And projections are what's essentially, here's our best guess. And when you do that projection, we all know in reality, it might be a little under, it might be a little over. So when that projection said in about 15 to 18 years, you possibly need a 4-lane roadway going through here and a 2-lane roundabout at the intersection of Apple Creek Road and 66th Street. Well, if I build a 4-lane road today, that means I have a 2-lane road south of Northgate Drive, and I have a 2-lane road north of Apple Creek Drive, so I have a 4-lane road in the center of this stretch. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense today, but maybe it does in the future. So what we looked at is, you know, this is a real challenging environmental area. You have BNSF, a lot of the Corps, a lot of FEMA input. Let's do all the dirt for a 4-lane road. Let's figure a 4-lane road with shoulders. Let's get all the dirt in, let's get it set up. But then we can build a 2-lane road with nice shoulders on it. So that way we have the expandability in the future. I can then take out the sides, add gravel, be able to pave it, and I still have a 4-lane road. So that way I'm doing minimal impact, and all my dirt that's going on each side with that big fill area, I'm able to easily expand it. Then we also looked at BNSF bridge. It was, I don't want to have to go back through the whole process with BNSF, start from the beginning on expanding a bridge. So let's have the bridge for a 2-lane road with shoulders, but let's also figure the pilings on each side, so I can go in, put those pilings in with this project, we cap them in the future when needed, if it's 15 years or 25 years, whatever it is, we knock the top of that cap off, and then we attach to it, we put new pilings up, and then we're able to expand the bridge too. And then we submit that to BNSF, so they know that ahead of time, so they know we're looking at expanding that bridge and everything's set up to be able to go through there. Then with Apple Creek, a lot of it is, okay, for that bridge, we're probably, because you're FEMA in the Corps, we could put in pilings right away, but we're gonna have to go through the same permit process, whether I do the pilings now or later. So we know we're gonna have to do it no matter what, so it's, we can look at, we can put the pilings in, or we can wait and deal with that in the future, but let's always figure how are we gonna expand this bridge and be able to have that, and let's always keep that in mind on how to do that, so that on both bridge designs, that's what we've always looked at, is how do we expand this and keep it in our same footprint, so we're not having to go out and buy more right away, we're not having to impact more lands, we're not having to do more environmental impacts and more environmental mitigation, and trying to manage that. So when we're looking at roundabouts, we had looked at, do we keep it at where the current intersection is, or do we shift it to the east? Well, the floodway, which is the green here, and the floodplain, which is the blue, the floodway gets far more impact at this location than it will here. So that's part of looking at how do we balance that, and how do we get that set up to be able to deal with everything. And it was, okay, the floodplain creates a lesser impact with that intersection than what the floodway would. The floodway is a bigger challenge. Well, that also affects the amount of right-of-way you're looking at. So if I'm crossing here going through, I do create a challenge for landowners here and here. So what we looked at is, do we just say, maybe we look at just purchasing the entire set piece of that land for this project to be able to deal with them. And you know, that gets into steps that are further along in the process. You know, we're on probably step 220, and that's probably step 400 at that point. So we still gotta go through a bit of the process, but we would work with the landowners. It would be negotiation. We'd have an independent appraisal that's done. They tell us what the price of the land is. Then we talk to them and we negotiate through what the price of the land is, and how big of the impacts might be, and how much might be bought or not bought. And it's part of the process of working through there. And then going through this area on the south side of the tracks, that's a big parcel of land that's there, and it's looking at, well, maybe we look at a bigger parcel for this project, because then I have a wetland mitigation area, I have a staging area, and everything's set up to be able to do that. So on the east side of the road, there's potentially larger right-of-way impacts, but it's part of the impacts that I believe we can deal with, because if we build it to the east side, this allows 66th Street to stay open through construction. And the construction period that we're looking at is 3 years. So it'd be nice if we could get all the right-of-way and everything done so we can bid it in November of this year. That may be challenging, so we might have to bid it in February or March next year to be able to get through everything. Then that allows construction to be from 2023, 2024, 2025. And the reason we're looking at 3 years construction is when I have that 30 feet of fill, the soils in this area are very weak. So if I put in 30 feet of fill, what happens is the soil that's on the sides that hasn't been touched is gonna kick up and it's gonna fail. Then I got big problems going through there. So the first year, we look at 20 feet of fill. And we'll have a sand layer with permeable wicks, so water has a path to come up, hits the sand, goes out the side, and that allows consolidation to occur faster. If we didn't do the wicks in the sand, when we're talking with the geotechnical experts, they're saying it'll take you about 100 years for this to settle. As well, we're not doing no 100-year project on this. We gotta kick this up a little bit here. So we looked at it with the wicks and being able to drain that. So the first year is the 20 feet, you let that settle. The second year, you had 10 more feet. It's gonna settle a little bit, so in the third year, we might have to do a little bit of, tiny bit of dirt work on that. Then we can start building all the roads, get all the bridges built. And what we looked at in construction is, let's look at the absolute critical path, must get done timelines. And one is that dirt, the first year, that 20 feet, that dirt has to be in. If that's not done, it's taking even longer, so that has to be done. The second year, the dirt has to get in, that's your other critical path, that must be done. The third year, the bridges have to be finished and that roundabout has to be done. But let's try and be flexible too. The roundabout has to be done by the third year, but there's nothing that says we can't build that roundabout in the first year. We can build it in phases like we did on County Road 10 and 66, where you build one half, you have the traffic on the other half, then we flip the traffic and be able to go through there. Because if I can get that roundabout in earlier, that allows for a safer intersection to be able to run longer. Then I can do my tie-in in the third year when we're switching traffic off existing alignment over to new alignment. Now, that's great and all, but contractors are innovative. They come up with ideas, we don't all the time. So a lot of it is, let's build a framework that we have to operate within, but let's leave enough flexibility to allow innovation when somebody else looks at it and be able to have some of those possibilities. So then the next question always becomes, well, what's happening with 66th Street? Well, 66, on this side, the old bridge is gonna go away. This portion of 66 goes away. BNSF has an access road on the south side. Well, BNSF still is gonna need to access their railroad. So what we're looking at is, I'll take out part of 66 down here, then we'll leave this part in so that they can get to access it, and we might have to change the roadway a little bit. But then with the approaches on this side, we would build new approaches to get up to this roadway, and because it's within public right-of-way, we would just pave everything back to the right-of-way line. That way it's all set and done. People can be able to still access it and be able to get through. So that's a real fast, quick overview of the entire project. I'm sure there's lots of questions. I know I always have some every time I look at it, but does anybody have any questions at this time? Yes, sir.
So my question is, I support some kind of a project here. I don't know whatever is come up with, but what's been put into, well, the main question I have is, what are the traffic counts and studies as far as which way are the people that are living in Lincoln and or down around that area? Which way are they leaving and going to town? And the second part of the question is, have there been any thought put into improving an alternate route for them to use this also?
Yes. So, second question first, because I remember it right away. For the alternate route, by the time you figure all the cost and everything with that, it gets a little extensive. Also, you always have to consider emergency services. When there's an alternate route going further out, it was about 20 minutes delay time. So when we talked with fire and ambulance, they said, no way, we will never support that. We will scream to high heaven on there.
Secondary.
Secondary access, the secondary access that exists today is out to 106th and goes around. That'd be the route, or you could go to Yagan to be able to get into town. And those are the two alternate routes if the train is blocking everything there. And unfortunately, if fire comes down and the train's there, now they're turning around trying to get back on there. And 20 minutes, big delay if somebody's having a heart attack and their house is burning on that part. So first part, you might have to remind me a little bit on there. Yeah, you're gonna have to remind me on there.
Remember.
Oh, okay.
Traffic counts is what he
Oh,
said.
traffic counts, there we go, thank you. So traffic counts today are about 5,000 vehicles a day is what basically comes out of Lincoln and Apple Creek Township going on this, which is almost a perfect split from what Lincoln Road is. It's about 5,000 each side. So when you project it 20 years out, which, you know, you're taking your best guess, you're getting about 16,000 in there, and you're getting at the upper limits of a 2-lane road at that point. I've seen some 2-lane roads take 17,000, but you're getting quite a beating at that point, so you really are starting to look at a 3-lane road or a 4-lane. Well, a 3-lane road here currently doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, in 20 years, maybe it will, but right now it doesn't, because it's, well, what are you gonna turn to if you do a center turn lane going through there? So really, you'd be looking at a 4-lane road at that point, and then a 2-lane roundabout at this point. In 20 years, you're almost looking at a 2-lane roundabout on County Road 10 and 66 also. So ultimately, in 20 years, you're not just looking at a potential 4-lane here, you're looking at 4-lane to the south and 4-lane to the north. And commissioners are always really happy when I tell them, we get to build more roads, more money. So it's always a challenge on those things, and it's how do we do that appropriately and cost effectively. Yep, yes, sir.
Any elevation changes north of Apple Creek Road?
Not a whole, it'll come up a little bit because we want to stop the 25-year storm event from overtopping the road. And we're elevating this a little bit in there, so it keeps about the 50-year out is what happens, but once you get above that, it'll go up and over the road. And then we're trying to get everything tied back in on the north side, so it's not drastically elevating it. A lot of this drains to the northeast corner of that intersection
Was
now.
that 3 years ago that flooded over?
Yep, and that, with that flood, with spring melt, you don't design for snow melt, cause, it's impossible, but it's, we always say stormwater design's more of an art than a science sometimes. When you're getting into groundwater or snow melt, you're really starting to read the crystal ball.
Was that a snow melt flood? I don't recall.
It was part of it was backwater going through it. It was a combination of the two. But that's also what we're looking at, is if we elevate this a little bit, we can keep it open far more often than what's happened in like 2009 and 2011 when those happened.
Then the 2 old oxbows right there at that intersection are gonna get filled in and you're gonna mitigate that with new wetlands?
Yep, I would build new oxbows essentially in a different location. And talking with the Corps, we're still working through that, but we're looking at, okay, for every square foot of oxbow I impact, I'll build a square foot of another oxbow. And the best place to have an oxbow is actually right by Apple Creek. And it's okay, let's find a good location for that I'm not going, because I don't want to build an oxbow that all of a sudden the channel jumps and then it becomes the channel. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, or a bit, yeah, it can be. And we're looking at having a little bit of it's not so much an oxbow underneath the bridge, but we're looking at digging the channel down, so that way in a 100-year flood, you have more capacity for water to get underneath that bridge, so we're not impacting everything going through there. Any other questions?
Two things that I just wanted you to just mention. Number one, this particular drawing that we showed there was something we did pictorially at the very beginning.
Yep.
The white line is really a little bit closer to the roadway. It's not quite sticking
Oh,
out as far as it is.
Yep.
And then the second item, both this roundabout and the roundabout up north are designed such that they could go to 4 lanes.
That they are expandable, so
Yeah, they are expandable. I'll let you go on.
Sorry, I'm always got all the technical terms. The chicane, so the legs that go out on each side of the roundabout. You can see on there, you have the red concrete, and all of a sudden you see this gray block going around it. That's designed so we can pop that out, pave it over, and then expand it into a 2-lane. And that's how that one's set up, and then we'd set this one up the same way. That way we're not having to build it wider, not having to buy more right away. It's just, okay, we can make it so it's expandable, and let's be wise about it. And let's not try and impact everything all the time. Any other questions?
Well, what's the impact, say, for instance, the people that are living on 66th Street or have a business or whatever, in this area or near, as far as, traffic speeds and or getting in and out of their present properties.
Okay, so going through here, because this is a little bit steeper and you're going into the intersection, we've changed that to a 35 mile an hour. You'd be 55 coming up to the top of the BNSF bridge, and as you're coming down, it'd go to 45, then 35. And then we go pretty much the same speed limits as you do on County Road 10 and 66 to be able to get through that intersection. Once you're out of it, you're going back to 55. Then when you get the mile up, you'd slow back down for that intersection up there. Going south, it'd still be 55 until you get to Lincoln, and Lincoln be at still the same portion unless there's more development, something that would happen, that we would need to have a speed study done to figure out what the appropriate speed limit should
So
be.
a car from the present Lincoln roundabout to the 66 and Highway 10 at roundabout, there would be no stop signs whatsoever in between those two.
Not on 66, no. You might to a side road, like Northgate Drive would still have a stop sign to be able to enter onto 66, but
But that would be on Northgate.
That'd be on Northgate
Yeah,
Drive.
As far as the north-south traffic.
north-south, you just have the roundabouts basically going through there. So from 52nd to Lincoln Road and 66 going north, you get to do drive in circles all over, but it'd be no stop signs. Which, as my boss can attest, I hate stop signs and I like to get rid of them as much as I can. I drive them nuts with that some days, so. Any other questions? And if there isn't, we'll still be here. There's another hour. It's kind of an open format. If you have questions for us, feel free to come up, ask us questions. We'll try and answer it best we can. And if we don't know, we'll try and get answers back to you. I know I always think of a ton of questions afterwards. That's what we have the comment sheets for. If you come up with a comment, you can always email me. I'll try and get it answered for you and be able to go from there. But otherwise, for a formal presentation, that's pretty much what we have. And also, we'll have another public input meeting on Thursday at the City of Lincoln in their City Hall. So, and that's 5:30, same formal presentation at 6, and goes to 7:30. But thank you for coming out, appreciate it. You have something saying?
Yeah, I have a question. So during construction, so public still gonna be able to use 66, right?
Correct. Yep. They'll still be able to use it. We're just trying to say, let's try and be flexible. We'd still keep traffic going no matter what through here. It'd just be phased traffic. Trying to get that through. And there's the potential we could build a roundabout the first year, second year, or third year. I think we just need to be flexible on that portion. I feel the sooner we can get a safer intersection in, the better.
Terrible intersection right now.
Yeah, and I've been driving this road since 2004. I live in Lincoln, and the roundabouts make it safer trying to get through. I remember County Road 10 and 66, I'd have to make that left turn every day, and it was an interesting turn every morning, that's for sure. Anything else? All right, thank you, appreciate it.
How about a plan for exit of a 66? Is there a plan for that out there in 94?
So does that work for you?
The Interstate 94 and 66th Street interchange, you're looking at probably 10+ years, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, the traffic from Lincoln would justify one from the south side today. Nobody disputes that. It's the traffic from the north side, that's not there. The infrastructure is not all there. That's why the county is currently building 66th Street from 43rd to 71st, because we're trying to get that infrastructure in place. Silver Ranch is developing, that's gonna help bring that along, but it's gonna take time to be able to go through there. Now, there could be some development we just don't know about that comes in and it generates a ton of traffic, like commercial, industrial. That could advance it at that point, but you have to meet federal requirements for an interchange if you wanna use federal money. The other option is you pay for it yourself. Now, Fargo, the city chooses to pay for it themselves, that's why they get so many interchanges so quick. The city of Bismarck historically has said, let's build these interchanges for 20 cents on the dollar instead of paying the whole dollar going through there and trying to balance that out. So it's a policy. I understand why each side chooses to do what they want, and be able to go from there, but, yeah, it's something I get questions on, geez, if not every month, at least every 2 months, all the time on there. And a lot of people are, hey, it'd be good to be in there, and it's, yeah, I live in Lincoln, I'd love to have it too, but it's just not quite there yet. Anything else? You're just itching to get out of here.
Is that available online right now?
This,
I will,
yeah.
thank you very